The invitation had been a complete surprise. A formal letter, stamped with the official crest of the Republic of Burkina Faso, had arrived at the Manchester United training ground. It was a personal request from the nation's leader, Captain Ibrahim Traore, inviting the famous goalkeeper for an official visit to the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. It was, the letter said, to honor a great son of Africa whose success was an inspiration to millions. Onana had felt a deep sense of pride. He was from Cameroon, but he felt a connection to all of Africa. To be recognized by a head of state was a special honor. But as his plane flew over the Sahara, his mind was troubled. It was because of a conversation he had overheard 2 weeks ago, words that were not meant for him. He had been at a fancy awards gala in Zurich, surrounded by football's most powerful people. In a quiet corner, away from the celebration, he saw 2 European businessmen who he recognized from sponsorship deals. They were talking in low, angry voices. "Our assets are at risk," one had said. "This Captain Traoré in Burkina Faso is a problem. He is stopping our progress." "He needs to be removed," the other replied coldly. "A new road needs to be built, and he is the roadblock. Arrangements are being made." At the time, Onana had thought it was strange, but it was not his business. He was a footballer. Now, as he flew to meet the very man they were talking about, the memory of that whisper felt like a heavy stone in his gut. When he landed in Ouagadougou, the heat hit him like a wave, but so did the warmth of the people. Government officials greeted him with wide smiles. "Welcome, Mr. Onana. Our country is honored to have you," they said. As they drove through the busy streets, people recognized him, cheering and waving. He was a hero here. For a moment, he forgot the dark words he had overheard. The presidential palace, Kosiam, was a grand and imposing building. Soldiers stood guard, their faces serious, but they nodded respectfully as he was led inside. The hallways were long and cool, decorated with beautiful local art. He was nervous, the way any man would be before meeting a president. An aide opened a large wooden door and gestured for him to enter. The office was huge, with a large flag of Burkina Faso standing behind a simple wooden desk. And behind that desk sat President Ibrahim Traore. He was young, dressed in his military uniform, and his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He stood up as Onana entered. Onana walked forward, ready to give a polite greeting. But the president spoke first, his voice calm and direct. "Mr. Onana," President Traore said, not with a simple welcome, but with words that seemed to look right through him. "Thank you for coming. I believe you are a man who understands that the most important saves don't always happen on a football pitch." Onana felt a jolt, as if the president's words had a physical force. How could he know? How could he guess that Onana was wrestling with a secret far bigger than football? Onana stood frozen for a second, his polite smile gone, replaced by pure shock. President Traore gestured to a simple chair opposite his desk. "Please, sit. Let us talk not as a president and a football star, but as 2 African men who love their home." Onana sat down, his mind racing. He watched as the president came around his desk and sat in the other chair, so they were close, facing each other. There was no desk between them now. It was a sign of trust, and it made Onana's heart beat even faster. "You must wonder why I really asked you here," Traore began, his voice filled with a surprising passion. "It is not just for a photograph. It is because of what you represent. When you stand in that goal, in that famous Manchester United shirt, the world doesn't just see a goalkeeper. They see an African man who has reached the very top through skill and discipline. You are not a politician or a soldier, but you have more power than many of them." He leaned forward, his eyes burning with intensity. "For too long," Traore continued, "others have told Africa's story for us. They come here for our gold, for our land, and they leave our people with nothing. They want us to be weak. They want us to fight each other. They want leaders who will listen to them, not leaders who will listen to their own people. My dream is to end that. My dream is a Burkina Faso for its people. An Africa for Africans." As Onana listened, the president's words hit him with the force of truth. This was not the speech of a normal politician. This was the raw dream of a man willing to die for his country. The whispered conversation Onana had overheard in that fancy hotel in Zurich now played back in his mind, but it was louder and clearer. He needs to be removed. He is the roadblock. Onana finally understood. The roadblock wasn't just a man, it was the very dream the president was describing. These rich businessmen weren't afraid of a captain, they were afraid of a free and strong Africa. They were afraid of losing control. In that moment, Onana was deeply moved. He was looking at a leader who was truly fighting for his people, and he knew with a terrible certainty that this man's life was in real danger. The secret Onana carried was no longer just a piece of information, it was a weapon. Keeping silent now felt like a betrayal of everything he believed in as a son of Africa. President Traore finished speaking, and a heavy silence filled the room. He looked at Onana, waiting for a response. Onana took a deep breath. He had a choice. He could smile, say thank you for the honor, and walk away, back to his safe life of fame and football. Or he could step onto a new field, a more dangerous field, and make the most important save of his life. He looked the young president right in the eye. "Mr. President," Onana said, his voice low but steady, "what you are saying, I know it is true. And because of that, there is something you need to know, something I heard in Europe." Of course, here is part 3 of the story. President Traore did not flinch. His eyes, already sharp and focused, seemed to narrow slightly. He leaned forward, his hands resting on his knees, and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a clear signal. Go on. The room was so quiet that Onana could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. He felt like he was standing on the goal line before a penalty kick, the whole world holding its breath. "I was at a football awards ceremony in Zurich a few weeks ago," Onana began, his voice low and serious. "It was late. I was in a quiet hallway when I saw 2 men. I did not know their names, but I have seen them before. They are powerful European businessmen, involved in club sponsorships." He paused, gathering his thoughts to get the words exactly right. "They were angry," he continued. "They were talking about their business, their assets in Africa. One of them said, 'This Captain Traore in Burkina Faso is a problem. He is stopping our progress.'" Onana looked up and saw that President Traore's face was like a mask carved from stone. He showed no surprise, only intense concentration. It gave Onana the courage to say the final, most dangerous part. The other man replied, "He needs to be removed." "He called you a roadblock, Mr. President, and he said, arrangements are being made." After the words left his mouth, a heavy silence fell upon the room. Onana had done it. He had passed the secret from his shoulders to the president's. He had no idea what would happen next. President Traore stood up slowly and walked to the large window, his back to Onana as he looked out over the city below. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched on, filled with unspoken danger. Onana felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. Finally, the president turned back around. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, there was a look of grim understanding. "What you heard," Traore said, his voice cold and hard as steel, "is the whisper of the hyenas who wish to feast on our country. These men are not just businessmen. They are the public face of a group that wants to own our mines, our gold, everything. They gave me a contract that would have made them rich and kept my people poor. I refused. And so, the roadblock must be removed." He walked back towards Onana and looked at him with newfound respect. Many men would have heard those words and chosen the safety of silence. They would have feared for their careers, for their lives. But you did not stay silent. You have great courage, André Onana. Hearing his first name felt different now. It was the name of a comrade, not just a celebrity. Onana felt a powerful surge of emotion. He had done the right thing. He thought of the small bag he had brought with him, containing the most valuable thing he owned. He now knew what he had to do with it. He stood up and reached for his bag. "Mr. President," he said, his voice thick with feeling, "I am just a footballer, but my heart is with Africa. I want you to know that you are not alone in this fight." He unzipped the bag and pulled out his bright green Manchester United goalkeeper jersey. It had his name, Onana, printed across the back. He held it out with both hands, offering it to the president. "Please," Onana said, "take this, as a sign, a promise." President Traore looked at the bright green jersey held in Onana's hands. For a moment, the hard-as-steel leader was gone. In his place was a man visibly moved by the gesture. He reached out and took the shirt gently, his fingers tracing the letters of the name Onana on the back. He held it not like a piece of merchandise, but like a battle flag that had been offered to him before a great fight. "In my life," the president said, his voice softer now, "I have been given many things: medals, honors, weapons. But this is a gift of trust. I accept it, André, and I will not forget it." He carefully folded the jersey and placed it on his desk, a splash of vibrant green in the formal office. The promise was made, and it was accepted. An alliance was forged. Then the president's gaze became sharp again. The leader returned. "A promise must be protected," Traore said, "and it must be given a purpose. You have given me your support. Now I will give you a shield." He walked back behind his desk and opened a small, polished wooden box. He took something out, keeping it hidden in his hand. "I cannot ask you to be a soldier," the president continued. "Your battlefield is the football pitch, but this war is not being fought only with guns. It is being fought in the minds of people, in newspapers, and in secret meetings in fancy European cities. In that war, you can be one of my most powerful soldiers." He looked directly at Onana, a new proposition in his eyes. "I am officially appointing you as a special football ambassador for Burkina Faso," he declared. "To the world, you will be a symbol of hope. You will visit our country. You will help us build football schools for children, and you will use your famous voice to speak of peace and the potential of our youth. That will be your public story." He paused, letting the weight of his next words sink in. "But secretly," he said, lowering his voice, "this title will be your shield. It will give you a reason to travel, to meet people. It will allow you to stand in the same rooms as our enemies, and they will see only a footballer. They will not suspect that you are the eyes and ears of a free nation. They will not know that you carry our heart with you." Onana understood completely. It was a role he was born to play. He would be hiding in plain sight, his fame his greatest protection. The fear he had felt earlier was now replaced by a firm resolve. "I accept the honor, Mr. President," Onana said, his voice clear and strong. "I will be your ambassador." "Good," Traore said with a firm nod. He opened his hand and revealed what he was holding. It was a small, elegant pin for the lapel of a suit. It was a simple circle of gold, with a tiny map of Burkina Faso carved into a piece of red stone in the center. He handed it to Onana. "This is the official pin of your new office," the president explained. "But it is also a message. Pin it to your jacket when you are in Europe. To most, it is just a piece of jewelry. But the people you spoke of, the hyenas, they will notice. They will know you have chosen a side." Traore's eyes locked onto Onana's. "Let us see who comes to ask you about your beautiful new pin." Onana flew back to Manchester in a daze. The world outside the airplane window was the same, but his place in it had changed forever. When he had flown to Ouagadougou, he was a footballer carrying a secret. Now, flying back, he was an ambassador carrying a duty. The small, heavy pin in his pocket felt like both a shield and a target. Back in the familiar world of English football, the contrast was sharp. At the training ground, his teammates joked and laughed, their biggest worry being the next match. Onana laughed with them. He trained harder than ever, but his mind was elsewhere. He would watch the ball, but see the president's determined face. He would hear the coach's instructions, but also hear Traore's warning. "Let us see who comes to ask you about your pin." He knew he couldn't wait. He had to send the message. His first opportunity came 2 days later. Manchester United had a huge European match, and Onana was scheduled for the pre-game press conference. He put on his sharp club suit. His hand trembled slightly as he took out the pith small circle of gold with the red stone map of Burkina Faso. He fixed it to his lapel. It was small, but it felt as bright as a spotlight. He walked into the room full of journalists and flashing cameras. He sat at the table, and for 20 minutes, the questions were all about football. André, how is the team's confidence? Are you ready for their star striker? He answered them all calmly, professionally. The pin went unnoticed. He started to think that perhaps nothing would happen. The conference ended, and he stood up to leave, a wave of relief washing over him. But as he stepped away from the table, a man blocked his path. It was a famous French journalist named Jean-Pierre, a man known for his charm and his deep connections to the most powerful people in football. André, a magnificent performance last weekend, Jean-Pierre said with a wide, friendly smile. Then his eyes flickered down to Onana's lapel. That is a very elegant pin. A new gift from an admirer? Onana's heart began to pound, but his face remained calm. This was the moment. It is an honor from the nation of Burkina Faso, he replied coolly, just as he had practiced. I have been appointed their special football ambassador. Jean-Pierre's smile never faded, but his eyes grew cold. He leaned in closer, as if sharing a friendly secret, but his voice was a low hiss. Burkina Faso, the journalist said softly. A beautiful country, I hear, but with very hard, stubborn ground. It makes it difficult to build new things there, new roads. He patted Onana's shoulder, the friendly gesture feeling like a threat. Tell your friends in the palace to be careful, Jean-Pierre whispered, his smile now a cruel twist of his lips. Sometimes, stubborn roadblocks must be cleared away, by force. The journalist stepped back, gave a polite nod, and disappeared into the crowd. Onana stood frozen, the man's words echoing in his ears. The message had been sent. And a terrifying counter-message had just been delivered, right to his face. The war had begun.